Hey,
Hello.
Matt. Well, I'm so excited because we chatted before for My Pet Dinosaur,
That's
which,
right.
which,
That was a while ago.
well, it takes you along when you're doing everything on a film like you do and have now done with Secret Kingdom. It takes you a while to get the film done.
Yes, and in fact, I was a little late on this one too. So, yes, it's good that it is finally done. But yeah, it's good to speak to you again.
I've already watched the movie twice.
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 Wow. Okay, that's good. That bodes well, I hope.
I love this film, Matt. I
Oh,
love
thank you so
this film.
much.
As much fun as I had, and as much as I love My Pet Dinosaur, you up the ante with The Secret Kingdom. It is absolutely. It's as I wrote back to you yesterday. It's a fantastical adventure. You've got heart, you've got bravery. The film is beyond charming. I'm in love with the pangolins. I'm in love with them. I want
Uh,
one.
Absolutely, yeah. They have been a bit of a hit, which is
Oh,
fantastic.
but you've got great themes happening here. And I'm seeing a lot of like Frank L. Baum, Wizard of Oz strengths with the thematics. And as we meet each of our characters, as we have Peter and Verity, and they go through the floor. And number one, I love the name of Verity because in Latin it's verite, which is truth. And
That's exactly it. Exactly, which is why Ergo actually says you are truth itself, I must concede.
yeah, and the ego and ergo, I thought that was. This is so creative, Matt. You just blow my mind with your creativity.
Oh, thank you very much. That's
And
that's very kind of you to say.
where do you even start with this? Because you're writer, director, sound designer, essentially the DP. You're doing VFX, which is you're a master at, and then you're doing voicing. Where do you even start? What was the impetus for this story, for this idea? Because it really is so engaging, and it's going to speak to kids, adults, families. It's wonderful.
Well, I have to say with this film, I actually removed myself from looking at other films, and I really just wanted to explore the concept of anxiety and loss. Those were two big things in my world at the time, and I wanted to, I suppose, put myself through a bit of therapy by doing this movie. It was quite a cathartic film for me, and in that respect, the themes at the core of it and the psychological concepts were very, very. They were very important to me to explore and explore correctly. But then, of course, I'd been doing a lot of research into dreams and the nature of dreams and how we actually use dreams to make sense of things. And I thought, what better way to explore anxiety and those kind of themes of fear than through this imaginary world? So that was a really important starting point for me. Then, of course, visually, I suppose I'm a bit of a child of the 80s, and I could never get away from those core influences, even though I did not seek them on this film at all. But they're so ingrained in my DNA that I really can't get away from them. It's funny you say The Wizard of Oz. That was my absolute favourite film as a kid. That was the first film I fell in love with and watched over and over and over again. When I could, of course, we didn't have a VHS player, and it would only come on television once a year here in Australia. So I was always glued to the television whenever it came on. And the visual influences actually came from, I was just sitting very still one day, and the image of two kids on a bed being whisked underground through tunnels with these tiny creatures under them popped into my head. And so then I went looking for various creatures that might be interesting, because I worked with a producer once who said to me, whatever you do, make sure that you show the audience something they've never seen before. And I saw this tiny little 3-second gif of an armadillo that was there, and then it instantly rolled up into a ball, and I was intrigued. But the armadillo creature itself was not right for the film, and that's when I came across this YouTube video of a little pangolin called Honey Boo Boo that was a rescue in Africa, and it was living with this woman and getting into all sorts of mischief as it was getting into the fridge and in the washing basket and creating havoc. And I thought, okay, what a wonderful creature that had so much character. And it also became a bit of a metaphor for the film too. You know, we've got the soft underbelly of the creature and the hard outer scales. And so I suppose that's where it all started.
Well, you just knocked it out of the park with the pangolins, because I have always been fascinated by them and the way
Yes.
they roll up into a ball. And this is where your skillfulness with visual effects and with animation really comes into play, because you utilize the attributes of the pangolin so that we see them. You know, they've got their hard coating, their armor on them. They roll up into a ball. They can become wheels. You use their natural traits and incorporate that into the characters and what they do.
Yeah, I suppose that's my documentary background. You know, I was always fascinated with animals, and I suppose that's why I ended up doing so many dinosaurs too, because I was working with Nat Geo and Discovery Channel so often, and always looking at the natural world. And, you know, animals are incredible things. You know, they've got their own way of moving through the world. Each animal has a range of locomotion, and it's very different to any other species within within the animal kingdom. So they've each got a uniqueness to them. So I suppose that's actually how I approach animation too. I come up with a set of behaviours for the animals, and then we can layer performances on top of them. So it's a really, really wonderful and sort of, I suppose, iterative process when animating these creatures.
Well, and it's not just with the pangolins, but as we meet them, we meet the pangolins. Then we meet the luminaire, who is a lemur, and I got to tell you, it's not a long-tail, ring-tail lemur, but it's the little mini kind, and it's just cute beyond cute. And with the glasses and the lenses, like an old school optometrist, I just thought that was so cool and so cute.
Oh, that's great. Yes. Yeah, I wanted to put as many weird and wonderful creatures on screen as I possibly could.
Well, and you do that, and we go from the pangolins to the luminaire, and then we meet Mendex, who he has a lot of dinosaur-like traits, but also dragon traits.
Yes.
So you kind of melded both dragon and dinosaur into one. But I love the character of Mendex because you're giving everybody such distinctive traits and emotions. And with Mendex, we immediately, there's a sense of ambiguity with him.
Yes.
Especially...
Except in his name, actually. Yeah, if you look up his name, it kind of gives it away.
And the fact that we have Pling, who I don't have a good feeling about him. So he's suspicious. But then as we continue on this journey to what in the Wizard of Oz would be the Emerald City, but here it's the Citadel and the clock, as we continue, he gains our trust. He's an empath. He eats his feelings. And Peter starts bonding with him, has this great connection. Peter, who's afraid of everything, suddenly isn't afraid as much of Mendex. And it's really interesting to watch how you develop that dynamic and that emotion, and how you build our trust in the
Yeah.
character. And
Mm.
I really like how you did that, especially with the whole idea of the 3 second self dare. I mean, how many of us
Yes.
haven't done that growing up? Okay, if I can make it across, 5 sidewalk squares in 5 seconds, okay, that's good. That's great. I
It's funny because I thought it was only me who did that, and it was a little sort of form of trying to get control over situations in my life that were if I had some sort of existential threat in my life, that was a small way that I could gain some control over my day by doing those kind of little counting games or chance games. And I didn't realize other people had done that. And once I started speaking to people about it, it was amazing how many people actually did. And I'd never seen that put on screen before.
oh, I as I'm watching it, I remember doing that all throughout my childhood with all kinds of things. It's always a self dare.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
when something happens, I still remember how empowering it felt when you actually succeeded in
Exactly.
either meeting
Exactly.
meeting or besting your self dare, which just made you push yourself the next time even a little bit more. So I love that. And the fact that we really see that come to fruition. We've already seen Peter with his counting and the watch, but to have that companionship and connection with Mendex, who
Yes.
does the same thing, that really buttresses that. And I think any kids that are watching this, they're immediately going to connect with that on every level.
Oh, that's great. That's good. That's good to hear.
Just absolutely amazing. And of course, then we have our turtle, our two-headed turtle that talks in rhyme. It's very much like Tweedledum Tweedledee and Alice in Wonderland, or with the rhyming Jabberwocky almost.
Yeah.
And and you just keep going. And we have the island and the gauntlet. The gauntlet is very fun because it's not just one
Um,
gauntlet, it's a room of gauntlets. And you have to tell me how you design those with that with the liquidity of that chainmail of the gloves.
well, it was something that the new technology that I've utilized in this film, which is Unreal Engine, really allowed me to explore different looks to things and iterate on them in real time. So that it's interesting you say fluidity, because the process itself was very fluid. Uh, I developed a whole lot of new pipeline that allowed me to literally change materials on the fly just via sliders, so I could dial things in and dial things out and really try new things and make sure stuff was looking the way I wanted it to. And then being able to apply real-time physics so that when the hands move, all the cloth flops around, so that it feels like chainmail and it feels heavy. It was just an absolute joy to work with this technology. It's so fun.
I mean, it looks beautiful. It
Thank
looks
you. In fact,
beautiful.
Epic Epic Games themselves were pretty floored by the output, and have they're doing a big thing on it, on the film as well. So it's been a nice collaboration with them.
I mean, just truly amazed me because I haven't seen that kind of fluidity and liquidity in a chainmail or a texture like chainmail on film before, in animation or in real life.
Right.
So, I mean, just beautiful. The way the fingers could move, the way the palm of the glove would move, really fantastic. And you countered that with the heavy armoring. And is it my imagination, or did you, in a lot of the armoring techniques that you use, be it from the pangolins and their outer shell to the turtles to the gauntlets, you have a curvature to all of the metals?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, that I suppose too that a lot of the world is kind of a little bit steampunky, a little bit Art
Mm-hmm.
Deco. And I've taken my design cues from that as well, right down to some of the decals and textures on the actual the metal surfaces. So some of the raised embossed areas have those kind of design elements and that kind of design language in it as well. But once again, I designed a whole lot of different materials. A girl, Coco Atkinson, who worked with me, she was very good with substance designer as well, and she put those things together with me so that we could actually just literally take sliders and dial them in and dial them out. It was just a really, really great experience.
And speaking of texturally, in addition to the chainmail, to the armory with the curvature, you also count. You have very few hard edges in here. Now, when we are at the Citadel and we have the game, obviously Peter, seriously, he should have been born in the 21st century to be more adept at gaming. When he's trying to
Yes.
do the matchy matchy, uh,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
gain access. You use the hexagon. You've got the hard edges of a hexagon there. And then we've got the hard edges on each piece of the artifact.
Yes.
But for the most part, you keep everything rounded, softer, and you use the actual, such as stone. Stone is hard. You make it very alabaster looking. So you're playing with the texture of the softness of round. Round isn't going to hurt you. Theoretically, in your mind, if you're a kid, if it's round, it's not going to stab you or poke you.
That's right. And some of the designs, I mean, of like the Colosseum and the inner clock of the Citadel, and even the camera moves,
Mm-hmm.
everything was, circular, twisting, also to mimic time as well as the softening of edges. So it's interesting that you pick up on that.
And those juxtapositions, with very few hard edges, it's a psychological thing. And I think it's a big appeal for kids and even
Mm,
parents watching it because it doesn't look like there's anything that's going to hurt anybody. We have
yeah,
pangolins that are armored and they turn into wheels. Wheels are round. Wheels are theoretically, in everybody's mind, they're tires, they're rubber, they're soft. So,
yes, yes.
I love how much thought you put into all of that. This is one thing I love about your work, Matt, is that you put so much thought into every element of it. And it shows with every frame.
Well, thank you, and I really appreciate that you take the time to appreciate that. That's wonderful. That is 30 years of visual effects training. When you look at an object and when you create it, even a rock has a story to tell. The way the lichen grows on the surface, and it may only grow on one side of it because it might have been shaded from the sun from
Mm-hmm.
that side. There's the way the rain would drip on it and create patterns and areas of light and dark. And so every object that I create has a backstory, and even down to the simplest texture, it has to have a backstory. That's why there are cuts and scratches on Mendax that,
Mm-hmm.
and little parts that, like, I even designed in a slider that says vitiligo, so we can, he's got pigmentation loss here and there
Mm-hmm.
that we can put in and out, and so I think in order to get a sense of realism into these creations, which are created from scratch, I really have to come up with those backstories for every element.
Well, you certainly do. And, one of the big things that we hear multiple times in the film is for Peter to think outside the box. A box is
Yes,
square. And you think of that old, adults will think of fitting a round hole in a square box, a square peg in a round hole. So it's always think outside the box. And then in tandem with that, it's his little light bulb. The little light
Yes.
bulb that represents imagination and creativity. And slowly, from the beginning of the film, with his father with a little light bulb in his hand, imagine, close your eyes and imagine. And we see the light intensity. The more Peter starts believing in himself and in the power that he truly might have as a king of the below world, the light gets brighter. The brass, it gets, as it turns into more looking like almost like a butterfly with the wings expanding, and it gets brighter and shinier.
Yes.
And that metaphor that it creates is stunning. I fell in love with it, Matt.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I love that you're picking up on all this depth. It's wonderful to hear this. I've done a few interviews, and they tend to be the same kind of questions and same comments. You're really picking up on some very deep core stuff to the film, and I appreciate that. And you said you've watched it twice. That's fantastic. So you must have knowing the twist of the film, you must have seen how that was executed the second time round.
Oh, I saw it the first time round.
Ah, there you go.
I got the.
Did you see it coming?
I saw it coming.
You saw it coming, okay.
I saw it.
The clues are all throughout.
Yeah, the clues go from beginning to end, but I suspected very early. Only because of the setup that you gave us. And if people are listening to the songs, if you're listening to Pling singing, and if you're paying attention to Pling, that's going to point you in a good direction.
Yes.
What was the impetus, obviously, on the surface, the idea for this light bulb? But what was, what led you to not have it just be a light bulb, but to start taking on wings and flying, which just, no pun intended, but it soars.
Well, I suppose that it's classic iconography for us to go, that's a thought. A light bulb over your head is a thought. But for a thought to really come to fruition and really tap into something deeper, I needed to give it wings so it literally could take flight. I come up with concepts. Everyone comes up with concepts. Everyone's creative. But whether or not you have the wings to take it the distance, that's the next level. So, even the film itself, you can have that initial spark of an idea, but then you really have to dig deep to put in, in particular 2.5 years of post-production to make it soar into the cinemas,
Now, what was your process like as you're writing this story? And you've got your main characters, you got Peter, you have Verite, you have Pling, of course Mendex and Ego and Ergo, and then armies of pangolins popping up. But you've got the core elements. And because this is so visual, number one, you don't want to look away from this film. You hook us with the visuals from the start. I love the period opening with the car, with the clothes, with the house. I love that. So it kind of takes us back in time to a gentler time, a time where people would read storybooks, would be creative, have fantasies. Kids weren't always sitting there on their, smartphones and not having human connection. But here, you start us off with that. You take us, back to maybe the 1950s is the feel that we get.
Yep.
But then everything, the visuals just soar. You set your color palette initially is beautiful with the turquoise of the car, with the slightly darker turquoise, more teal color in the bedroom, on the walls, the paint.
Yes.
I really like that because that's warmer. It's cooler, it's not offensive, it's not intrusive, and it's very calming. And
Yeah.
then once we take off into the below, did you start at that point sketching, storyboarding this as you're writing? Did you write the whole
Absolutely.
thing first, or was this
I
done
wrote
in
the whole thing
tandem?
first, but I wrote the whole thing first. But while I was writing it, I was also doing concept sketches for the creatures and some key moments that were in my mind. You know, because I used my iPad, it recorded all my strokes. So I've got these little movies of me drawing these key concept frames, which is something we're going to put up on the website pretty soon.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're fun. They're a lot of fun. And so it really shows the progression of what I had in my mind to the end product. And that also helped while writing the actual screenplay to try to maintain those initial sparks of influence that were in my mind. So, yeah, the screenplay took a long time to write because of the subject matter. It was difficult, and there was the twist was not initially in there, and I kept shying away from that as a solution because it seemed pretty heavy. But I did consult some child psychologists to make sure that wasn't going to be a problem and that it was appropriate for the age bracket, because once I basically succumbed to that being the finale, then everything fell into place, and it fell into place very quickly and very easily, because essentially that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm. Was it challenging to come up with your color palette as you were going along? The world of the pangolins, it's so golden. It's so
Yes.
golden, it's so warm, and we move from there, into the wide open spaces when we meet Mendex, and then as we're on the island, it's constantly shifting and it's getting a little darker.
Yes, I mean, one thing I do look at when we're doing the grade of the film is to look at those progressions and to look at the entire film as a colour palette. So, and see where the colours are supporting the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I love the progression that we go through from the pangolins to the luminaire, which is very golden and sparkly, and just you want to stay in the luminaire's world.
Yes, well, that is the world of pure imagination.
And then as we keep going, and we until we finally we meet the shroud that we have heard about, that everybody's so afraid of. And that's a real big moment in this film. Huge.
Indeed. Yes, absolutely.
I love how you visualize the shroud throughout the film. It's kind of like curlicues almost, like spirals upon spirals, like a coil, like a slinky. That's
Yes. It is like that, but it's also, each tendril is made up of chains, literally the chains that are binding Peter. They are the metaphor. There's a metaphor within a metaphor there.
Well, that's why I was thinking slinky. I know you worked with Joseph Morris as your editor. How challenging was the editing process on this one?
It was actually a joy, because Joe has a way of taking a bucket of green Lego blocks, green screen Lego blocks, and putting them together in surprising ways too. And Joe was actually really great at, pushing some of the ideas, so that, because we have this world, I mean, the wonderful thing about this technology is that what you see on screen are, they're the final shots, but those worlds exist in full 3D space.
Mm-hmm.
And so, we can actually move the camera around in real time and grab new shots. And once Joe found out that I could do that, I started calling him Oliver Twist, because he was always saying, "Please, sir, can I have some more?" It was a case of, give me more shots, more shots, more shots. And that was really great, because Joe has obviously got a film background, but he also does a lot of commercials as well, so that he's very visual in his cutting. Plus, he's not afraid to, at the assembly stage, throw in all sorts of things from other films and commercials so that we have reference points for the kind of feel that we might want. And I can tell you too that some of the gauntlet scene in particular was him and I riffing on that and just laughing about all sorts of weird and wonderful things that the gauntlet could say. Because, you know, the base stuff in the script was, of course, there, and there are a few jokes, but we just felt that we could come up with a bit more of an assembly of characters in amongst it.
Was it difficult to find the pacing with this one? Because the pacing here, I really like the pacing because we do have moments of lull and you build it up to a big reveal like the Luminaire. Like all of a sudden we see this dragon, we meet Mendex. We go into dark and it's slow as we're moving along. It's slow going into the Citadel. But then you punctuate it, so you build up, you're constantly building. And then we get a big ba-boom. And then we slow it down a little after we find an artifact. And you build up again. And I like the pace of this.
Oh, that's great. I mean, look, I think for me, I was really wanting a pacing of almost an art house film within a kid's film. And because I found that when I'm watching some of that classic cinema, those longer shots give the audience time to really engage with the film and start to imprint and anticipate. And they're the things that I think help really anchor the film in people's minds. If you're actually actively engaged in the process of wondering what's coming next, or giving the audience time to digest what they've seen before you start punching it up again, I thought that was it felt like the right way to go for me.
Mm-hmm. I think it works really well because it's like you get that anticipation, much as like a thriller, an adventure film or a thriller. And we found the first artifact. Yay. Okay, but now how do we find the second one? And then you bring us in with some of Pangolin's rhyming, with his sing-songy, and then we get Ego and Ergo. They talk in rhyme, which keeps it whimsical. So I really love it. And carrying through on the childlike whimsy and the whole idea of being creative and a child and letting your imagination go, which is what we really want to see Peter do throughout this film, is Chris Wright's score. Matt, this score, not only is the score beautifully done, but the orchestration, the arrangement of it, and the instrumentation is fantastic.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful, and I'm very, very, very pleased with it. In fact, we have an opportunity where it looks like it's going to be performed by a live orchestra to the film as well. So that's going to just be a magic moment for me.
Wow. What were you looking for in your talks with Chris? What were you looking for musically to complement the story and the visuals?
Well, we started off with what we called Peter's theme suite, which is the recurring motif that comes back and played in different registers and different instruments. And that was to really encapsulate his anxiety and loss, but able to build into something triumphant as well. And I suppose that throughout the score, I mean, my background is in music as well, so I speak very musically to Chris. I don't say, hey, Chris, can we change that? It sounds a bit brown. I'll say, can we, raise that to an F sharp and go into a Lydian mode here to really get that brightness. So we work very well together, and obviously this is the third film I've done with Chris, so we have a shorthand as well. And it took a while to find some of the themes. The Luminaire's theme took a little while to find. Verity's theme is in there, and that came quite naturally. That's lovely. But I mean, the core of the score is really built around that theme suite, Peter's theme.
Yeah. And and I could pick out in certain moments where I'm hearing some recurring motifs, and I always love that in music. And with the instrumentation here, and there are certain instances where it gets a little whimsical and lighter, and I'm hearing like piccolo, flute influences come infiltrate. You guys stay away from the heavier like tremolos.
Yes.
This is not a film that requires tremolo with a string tremolo.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I think we actually stayed away from a few things. I stayed away from for the most part. I mean, there's a couple of little fanfare moments with the trumpets, but in the main, I stayed away from those kind of musical cliches. I absolutely love the deeper string sections. I love the double basses, I love the cellos, I love the violas. I think what Chris has done with the solo cello treatment of the theme is just wonderful. It's old school, classic Hollywood kind of sound, and it was just beautiful, and it's organic. And once again, where it's touching on everything being round and organic, that's what I wanted out of the score as well. I didn't want anything that was too sharp, too stabby, and there is a lot of underscore, but the other thing is that everything that's there tells the story as well. The idea is that we could turn off the visuals and you could still, get a sense of what the story was.
I personally want the soundtrack. I want that score. So
that is coming out. That is coming out.
Thank God. You just made my day, because that is something I want to have that I can put on in the car when I drive.
Sure, absolutely. No, I have done that, and it's an experience.
Because just listening to it with the film, it's the kind of scoring that it takes away the pressure of driving in LA traffic. Well,
I live in Tasmania, and we don't have anything like traffic down there.
You're so lucky.
But it does merge very nicely with the scenery, wide open spaces. So it's a very good soundtrack for that as well.
Well, and you mentioned organic with the music and with several other things. And one of the great organic elements of this film is your sound design and your sound mix. I love the different sonic elements that we get to hear, such as with the Luminaire. We can hear the woodland sounds, the little cicadas and crickets in the background. And we hear, little pangolin feet walking, stomping, a turtle shell breaking on concrete bricks. Your sonic elements, it's a complete ambient experience.
Well, that's also good to hear. It's one of those things that's another element of the storytelling. The sonic choices that are made, the registers in which you put those different timbres is really important to telling the story. And I think the thing with sound design too is it's important that it's there as an element that is supporting, but it doesn't detract and doesn't take over from the story itself. Often you do get mixes whereby it's that real loud, soft, you struggle to hear the dialogue. You struggle to hear over, a whole wall of bombastic noise.
Yep.
And I tried to make sure that was not the case. And also was playing with some of the spatial positioning of things as well. You probably haven't, I'm not sure if you've heard it in 5-1, but the end scene where you have the shroud taunting Peter, we have that sort of moving around the soundscape as well.
Now I have to see it so I can hear it in 5-1.
Yes, yes.
Or in full-on Atmos.
Yes.
I will pay money to go to the theater and see it just for the sonic experience. Now, was it difficult to cast this? I love Sam Everingham as Peter, and Elia Brown as Verity is just enchanting. She is adorable.
Yes, she can steal a scene quite well, that little girl.
I'll tell you. Was it difficult to find the two of them?
It absolutely was. We cast Australia-wide, and it was a fairly lengthy process. I worked with Morifay Casting here, and they were just wonderful. They were able to get a good range of different kids in, but Elila stood out absolutely immediately. As soon as she walked in the door and delivered the first line, I was like, okay, here we go. Now we've got a different caliber of kid here. And it was actually, Peter was the hardest character to cast. We had a lot of boys through, and they were all quite good. But I'd actually found Sam through a friend of mine, Joe Samuel, who was in My Pet Dinosaur and was incidentally Mad Max's wife in Mad Max 1. Mm-hmm. And she runs an acting school in the Blue Mountains in New South Wales. And I was talking about the casting process to her, and she said, look, I've got this boy in my class, and he's just superb. So she sent me a little screen test and his headshot, and he certainly had the right look, and he had what looked to be some very, very solid skills. And so I decided to bring him into the greater casting process, and he came in to the city and auditioned with Elila, and it was just immediately obvious that he was the one.
One of the big issues here really comes down to voice casting. How challenging was that guy, I think his name is MATT Drummond, who was voicing Mendax and Luminaire and Elwyn, the elder pangolin? Was he tough to work with?
Absolute diva. Complete diva. Really difficult to get him to turn up. And
oh my God. Did you always plan on voicing these three characters, Matt?
No, I actually didn't at all. But during the animation process, part of the thing that we do is motion capture with iPhones,
right,
believe it or not. And so that was the way that I was just getting the animation down and doing the voices as initially there was going to be temp voices, so we did some temp passes, and Joe cut them into the film, and we started working with them, and then we kept coming back to them, and I was looking at different actors for those roles, and Joe just said, they're just working, and we came around to the fact that they were working. The voices were working, and they all had a certain quality to them that helped bed us into that world as well. So, no, I don't consider myself a voice actor or an actor at all, but it was something that served the story and served the animation in the end and served the production.
Well, I think you did a wonderful job voicing those three. Darius Williams is enchanting as playing. And then
absolutely,
Beth Champion and Roland Holmes. Did you have them voicing in the booth together for this one?
Yeah.
Their timing is perfection.
It's hilarious. Okay, so because it was during the pandemic that they recorded, and I'm in Tasmania as well, and they're in New South Wales, but they're both very good friends of mine. You would have noticed them they were both in My Pet Dinosaur.
Yeah.
And they're a husband and wife team, those two. So the funny thing was that they did the record in their studio at their place, and when we got the rushes in, Joe and I were in hysterics because they were actually bickering at each other in character.
Oh my God.
It was so funny. We were in stitches, and it was just wonderful. So, I mean, yeah, their timing is impeccable because that's who they are together.
I wondered because truly, because it's so rare that we actually get two voice actors in a booth together. But for their timing, and of course the rhymes. Now, did they stick to a script for the actual rhymes that you had written, or did you let them ad lib any of that?
It was mainly for the rhymes it was all stuck to, but for all the efforts and Rolly with the voice, the vocal warm-ups, because he was classically trained as an actor as well, and so he did all these vocal warm-ups, before Ergo delivers his opus monologue there, and so I just let them go for it with that kind of thing. I mean, they stuck to the rhymes because they were important for the story, but all the other bits and pieces, there was definitely some improvisation that was used in the film.
Mm-hmm. This is so lovely getting to talk with you, Matt. I'm such a huge admirer of your work, and this film is it's magical to me. Before I let you go, I've got to ask you, you said this was very cathartic, making this one.
Mm-hmm.
What did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker? At the end of the day, now the film is coming out, and you've gone through this whole process with this story. What did you learn about yourself as a filmmaker that you can now take forward into future films?
I think it's more about the things I learned about myself, and I suppose that's core to the underpinnings of being a filmmaker. I found power within to overcome the things that I was dealing with, and to let go of things I couldn't change, and to come to acceptance, which is what this film is ultimately about. Yeah, they're the core aspects of it, and acceptance for somebody who plays so many roles and is obviously a bit of a control freak in that respect, is a good lesson to learn.
I mean, writer, director, cinematographer, sound designer, VFX supervisor, voicing 3 characters, animation, mocap, compositing, colorist. I mean, you did everything, Matt. Almost everything.
Yes, I worked out that in 2.5 years, if I'd have taken an average 8-hour work day, that I jammed 6.8 years into 2.5.
Oh my God. Oh
Yes.
my God. That's
so you can
scary.
understand that I have a very understanding wife who is also my co-producer as well.
Well, her understanding pays off in spades when it lets you make a film like this. I'm in love with this film, Matt. I really do love it.
Thank you so much. That just means a lot. It really does. It's great to hear that it's really resonating with people.
Oh, and of course, I guess now I'm going to have to wait 4 years to talk to you again so you can make another film.
Well, we're going to aim for 2.5 to 3. Okay. And we're turning Secret Kingdom into a series. We're going to adapt it to a full series for TV.
Will it get distributed in the States, or is this for Australia, or?
Oh, no, we're definitely looking at, a worldwide distribution.
Oh, that would make me very, very happy. And we could revisit some of these characters.
Absolutely. Well, Pling will be, a very main character in the series, and will be in every episode. But then we'll have some, a wealth of new characters as well.
Well, I think you'd have to have Luminaire.
Oh, he'll have to come back. He'll have to come back. Absolutely. So yes, it's something I'm very excited about because I get to, apart from my wife being a very talented producer, she's also now a fully qualified psychotherapist. So we're going into the underpinnings of the series and delving deep into the psychological concepts that will be dealt with each episode and with each new protagonist.
Oh my God.
And the overarching, the overall series arc as well. So yeah, she's gone and built some very, very valuable skills, and I've built a very valuable pipeline, and we're going to combine the two and see what we come up with.
I am so excited to hear this, Matt. Oh my God. You just made my night. Let me tell
Excellent.
you. Oh, Matt. This has been so wonderful getting to speak with you again. I hope we get to do it again sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm at your disposal.
Oh, thank you. And anything new that comes up, you can always reach out to me and let me know.
Fantastic. I absolutely will.
Matt, thank you so, so much.
Absolute pleasure. No, thanks again for taking the time to view it twice.
Well, and I'm going to I'll see it again when it's in the theater, and if not, I'll still watch it at home again. So you can count on two more viewings from me.
Fabulous. Love that.
Thanks, Matt.
Okay, great to talk to you.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.